So today I'm going to cover handstand basics. These are the most common questions I get asked in terms of doing handstands, both beginner and intermediate. Most of the drills I'd class as beginner, but a lot of people get to an intermediate level and they have some gaps in the beginner skills. So we're just going to run over shoulder flexibility, hip flexibility, wrist prep, and then initial kick up exercises and starting to think about the balance. Just going through some of the concepts that maybe I haven't covered in some of my other videos. So what we want to think about is when we do a handstand, we want our body to be one segment. So it wants to be one piece, like this stick. I can balance this stick on my hand. So it's very easy to control what's happening with the stick at the bottom because there's a great connection from the bottom to the top. Our bodies are more like this stick. So it has a hip and a shoulder. Okay. So the shoulder can move and the hip can move. So when we try and balance that, it's much harder because things are moving around. So what we want to try and make is our body to be more like this stick and less like this stick. So how we can do that is to try and make the body one segment. And to do that, if we can try and balance out the muscles surrounding the shoulders and the muscles surrounding the hips, it's going to make that process much easier. So that's why when we handstand, we recommend opening the hips up. So it could be hip flexor type stretches for the hip flexor here. It could be getting more into the quad rec fem that covers the hip and the knee into a stretch like this, up against the wall, like a couch stretch. It could be going into hamstrings, so back of the legs, obviously forward fold positions, Jefferson curl up on the box holding a barbell. That type of thing is really powerful. Now, any of my follow-along videos for handstands has those hamstring and quad hip flexor stretches in. So check them out if you want to see those in more detail. Now, with the shoulders, there's the shoulder stretches that commonly use in classes and things, this type of thing. I just want to go for a couple of other shoulder prep that I'd recommend people do, especially if they are tight in this shoulder position. So hanging is probably one of the best, most powerful ways of doing it, and it's something that I'd recommend you do daily. So hanging on a bar, ideally hands shoulder width apart, so similar to what position we're looking for in the handstand. So here, and then I'm going to relax as much as possible. So I just spend time there. So building up so you can hang for 1 to 2 minutes and doing that daily is really going to help with that overall lengthening and making the body one segment. The other thing we can do is use the foam roller to go into some extension through the shoulders and through the upper back. Now I can make this easier or harder depending on my hand placement, depending on how high I take the roller. So I'm starting here off, I've got one mat and the roller. I'm going to come just underneath my shoulder blades. So probably mid-thoracic. Come back, hold on, take the butt towards the floor. Now, if that feels okay, I'm going to hold that 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Now, I could increase the height of the roller, so I could add more mats underneath the roller to make it harder. I could decrease my hands, so here is easier, here is harder. Or if it's too hard, I could put a mat underneath my butt instead of underneath my back. So they're the ones I mainly use for opening the shoulders up. So wrist prep I've covered in all my other videos when I'm doing a follow along. So basically it's spending time with straight arms and having the hands in different positions. Loading the hands as much as possible in each different position and trying to go into extension. Obviously, this is what we're aiming for, is to go into this range, not this range, but it's good to do a little bit of work on both sides of the wrist to balance it out. But we really want to be working into extension as best we can. Now, everyone's hand prep, hip prep, shoulder prep is going to be different depending on, if they sit behind a desk all day or they're posturally very tight compared to someone else who's more flexible and more open. They need to do less time with their stretching. It's common sense. So conditioning the line, we have two ways of really conditioning the line. We can do floor drills or we can do chest to wall drills or drills actually in the handstand. So line drills, I use a combination of front and back line drill. These are the most commonly used across the world in terms of classes and teaching handstands. So this more hollow body position with low back on the floor, reaching the stick away. So it's really focusing on that body being one segment. If it's too hard, I come away, but still trying to keep the one segment so my feet are connected to my hands. This way around, reaching out, same thing, trying to make the body as long as possible. Slight posterior tilt to get the glutes and the abs activated to make a connection between the legs and the torso. Again, just to make that body one segment. Then doing the same thing up against the wall in a chest to wall handstand. So chest to wall, just got that position, and then we walk up to the wall. Now it might start here, focusing on the body being one segment in a good position, not in a bad position. Working up till we get to here, so only toes touching the wall. But again, pushing, making the body one segment and as tall as possible. So conditioning holds are done in those positions to reinforce that one segment and that line. So entries to handstand, very, very important that we can do this repetition of this. So more the intermediate level, we want to see consistency of kick up, consistency of catch. Shoulders on top of the hands. So this is the normal setup I would give for handstands is shoulders on top of the hands, looking down towards the floor. Pick a focal point, keep that exactly the same. The hand, the shoulder, and the focal point does not change. I kick the hip on top of the shoulder, feet on top of the hips, and there's my handstand line. So that base is very, very important, that bottom position, and we just put the hips and the feet on top. So obviously most people are starting up against the wall, so the same concept, exactly the same. We want to have hands, shoulders on top of hands, and then I'm going to kick this leg up. See how the shoulders stand on top, and I just make that bigger and bigger until I get up to the wall. Now that base, hand, shoulder, focal point, it stays exactly the same. I'm not a big fan of moving the head and the shoulders around as you kick up. Obviously, your line is going to look slightly different person to person, depending on your flexibility, your limb length, your confidence, and your strength. So we'll just quickly run through heel pull and toe pull basics. Again, these are the two most common exercises used across the world to learn handstands. So basically the heel pull, basically I'm going to kick up to the wall. I'm going to make the body one segment. Again, really important, that one segment. So imagine our body is that stick. So it's leaning up against the wall. I'm just going to push my fingers, come off the wall, go back to the wall. The goal here is to come all the way off to a handstand, so a vertical stick, and then you return back to the wall. Initially, if that's too hard, you just come off the wall a little bit, go back. And then over time, we build it so we can handstand, return to the wall. So what it looks like, to kick up, use the fingertips, pull off the wall into your handstand, relax the fingers, I fall back to the wall. Notice I'm not kicking off the wall, so fingertips push, come off the wall, relax the fingers, go back. So there's your heel pull. The beginner to start with might just work on pushing, heels just come off a little bit, go back. Heels come off a little bit, come back. And then over time, you work to the point where you can pull off, there's your straight line, go back, so it's stacked, and you're not falling back. Okay, then we have the other side of the handstand, so commonly known as the toe pull. So chest to wall, and now I'm going to pull from the wall using my hips and or my shoulders. But I would prefer people to just use the shoulders. That's the goal. The more we can do work to balance and rebalance the handstand lower to the floor, so hands, shoulders, as opposed to hips, the easier it's going to be. If you start moving the hips around, it gets very top heavy and you wave around. So chest to wall handstand, actually don't kick up that way. Get used to that walking up. So there, now I'm going to move the shoulders away from the wall. My toes are going to slide down until the toes come off. And then I'm going to push up, fingertips to go back. Shoulders come off, push up, fingertips to go back. Hip would be more like this. Push up, fingertips to go back. So that covers most of the commonly asked questions. If you have any other questions that don't fit inside that one, stick them in the comments below or send me a message. Thumbs up and subscribe would be appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.